Hey everybody, and happy Friday. Bryce Koon here with Swarm Talk. We're talking Georgia Tech, but we're also talking about what did Tulane and what did TCU show us for Georgia Tech fans? What happened? There's been a lot of news surrounding Georgia Tech over the past couple weeks, and some really good news, some good headway on the recruiting trail in 2024. But I think all of this is a culmination of what could we see happen with Georgia Tech in the future. We're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of Swarm Talk. We're here on the Crowded Booth.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The Crowded Booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.
We're here on the Crowded Booth. My name's Bryce Koon. Swarm Talk. We're back. It's been a little bit of a hiatus. And before we get started today, what I want to tell you is welcome into the show. I want, if you're a Georgia Tech fan, to not worry. If you did, and I know you did, if you saw what was going on, I did accept a new position covering another team that is not related to Georgia Tech, still with the 24/7 Sports Network. But we're still going to be talking about Georgia Tech here on the Crowded Booth. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. Make sure to like this video. And make sure to comment. Remember, I let you guys know if we can hit 1,500 subscribers on the channel, I would bring one of you on to talk about Georgia Tech and kind of your thoughts. That's still in the works. I need you to join the Discord link down below to let me know how much you want to be in the show. We'll be picking that out. Happy New Year. Hope everyone had a fantastic holiday season, Christmas season, and everything in between. We're talking Georgia Tech, though, today. You can see with the gear. We're going to take this in a little bit different direction. And as we get started, I kind of want to lay that out. Obviously, with me not being on the Georgia Tech beat anymore, it's not going to be as much as of a breaking news of this kind of thing. It's going to be more reactionary. It's going to be more of a fan type of show. And so that's what I want to bring you in to talk about it. This is Swarm Talk, the #1 Georgia Tech show on the internet. Let's talk here. Look, you see it in the title. You're probably wondering, Bryce, what in the world are you talking about? What can TCU and Tulane show us? What realistically do those schools have anything to do with Georgia Tech? And I want to caution you in this because I strongly believe, I really do strongly believe that this is a program in Georgia Tech that's got a lot of full steam ahead type of mentality, a lot of things to be excited about. We obviously saw in the news that Georgia Tech finalized their coaching staff. They brought in, I love the hire of Kevin Scherer, his experience, his wealth of knowledge, the way they're going to be able to go to him. I think that's great as a co-DC. Bringing back Marco Coleman, really quickly I'll touch on that. I think bringing back Marco Coleman is not an indictment of what Larry Knight and David Turner did, but more of just how the business works. And when you get a new head coach, you're going to bring in new guys, your guys. And I think that's what Brent Key did in this situation. More of that type of mentality than anything wrong. Because if we're honest with ourselves, the defensive line, we saw some guys take the step up, and I was really impressed with that. So I think that it's more of a situation of Brent Key bringing in his guy. We know what Coleman can do in recruiting. They've already offered a 5-star who was heavily recruited, an IMG kid. If you put the dots together with Chris Winkie kind of being an IMG guy, the IMG guy, and Marco Coleman, his lead recruiter, who he had some traction towards Michigan State before Coleman left, you got to feel where good Georgia Tech sits in that if they can have a successful year. We're going to talk about that as well. But the coaching staff is finalized. ACC bowl season is finalized. Bowls are really, kind of done except for the national championship. And, we heard a lot of grumbling, a lot of groaning from the Tech faithful after those folks up in Athens came back to win. But I want to hit this, and I want to say this because I think that this sits kind of well with where Georgia Tech needs to go and what they can do. Is you look around and you say to yourself, man, how can we get there? And I think two programs that I love where they are, and I love how they've gotten to their ascent, is TCU and Tulane. Tulane, obviously, in the Cotton Bowl against USC. TCU in the national championship. I mean, look, if you had that on your bingo card, if you had that on your betting card, your betting sheet at the beginning of the season, bravo. There you go, Matt Brook, the golf clap. Bravo, because that was something that I don't think a lot of us even saw, a lot of us even thought of. TCU, I think they were ranked preseason 7th in the Big 12. But what did it show us? And what can we as the Tech fan base take away to say, okay, now this is what can happen? I think the biggest thing is you talk about development. At both programs, we've seen homegrown talent. I want to make sure I get this right in the word, not microscopic, not finite, but very acute transfer portal-esque moves. And they've been the right ones. And then you take these players and you develop them into Tulane football players or TCU football players. And in order for Georgia Tech to take that next step and build off of a 5-7 season with a lot of momentum tracking after Brent Key finished 4-4 and the way he did, and the fashion that he did, development is going to be huge. Developing the guys that you have on the roster to showcase that you can be in play for higher profile recruits, higher profile names in the transfer portal. Here's where something of my new job and the old job overlap. TCU is a prime example of this. Developing players, having a guy in your wide receiver room, Quentin Johnston at TCU, who is probably going to be a top 15, top 20 pick. He'll be the number one receiver taken off the board this year in April. But having that allows you to get some solid players from elsewhere. LSU's Jack Betch is one of those. Betch is a guy that transfers from LSU to TCU, gives them a name in the wide receiver room to add and to make continuity, to continue the success TCU's having. Because if you are Georgia Tech, one thing that you don't want to happen, you don't want to be a one-hit wonder. You don't want to be one of those programs that burst on the scene and quickly fades away just as fast as they came onto it. My thought process with this is that I think that Georgia Tech has to show in 2023 continuity and a step forward. But they've also got to have the ability to develop, because if you can keep that in the fold, if you can keep it in the fold, if you can keep players in the fold and improve your brand, improve your notoriety to players in the portal, to players in the high school recruiting ranks, it's only going to take one season to gain that notoriety. The question is how can Georgia Tech maintain it? And that's the best example of what TCU did with the Quentin Johnston. They found a guy, they developed him, he's a star. Now look, you give TCU credit, but give Quentin also credit for TCU as well. Tulane's another example. Willie Fritz, there was a lot of hubbub if he was going to be the head coach at Georgia Tech, and it's kind of one of those ironic situations where he is in play here with this. But how we have to talk about this is if Tulane falls off the edge of the cliff next year. Look, they were a 2-win team last year, an 11-win team this year, or a 12-win team this year, then they finished 12-2. It speaks volumes if they don't have to go 12-2 next year, but win another American Conference title. If they can challenge for another New Year's Six Bowl. Because now you're starting to say, hey, this is not just a flash-in-the-pan program, but it's also a program that can turn and now has arrived. And that's what Georgia Tech wants to strive for. So I think that's why you can look at Tulane and you can look at TCU as two programs you want to model yourself after. You want to have a head coach that is identified as a leader. Brent Key, whether you like him, you love him or not, he's a leader. That's what he is. Can this coaching staff develop the talent? That remains to be seen, not over the course of 1 year, but over the course of a 4-year career of a player, or a 3-year, depending if you get to the NFL faster. But my thing is that you want to have continuity. And I think that Georgia Tech can do that. I think this is a program that can be consistent. It needs to get back to being consistently good before you can be consistently great. If 2023 becomes a nice year, if 2023 becomes a year where you say, hey, you go to a bowl game, and I've said this in our Discord, I've said it in a couple Twitter groups. If the Yellow Jackets can get to 7 wins this year, and let's say they win a bowl game, they finish 8-5, we really don't know, and we may think that we know what that looks like from a recruiting perspective or, brand awareness or anything like that. NIL deals in Atlanta now being opened up because you had success. But we really don't know because we've never really seen Georgia Tech be good in this era now of college football with NIL and how important your on the field play has to be in order to gain advantages over other programs. We haven't seen that. You didn't need it with the triple option. And before that, the gap between 2007, 2006, and now is so wide, the game has changed so much. So once again, we tread lightly here because folks that don't listen, don't like to watch this show, but still do for some reason, are quick to say that we just crap on the history of Georgia Tech. No, it's more of saying that the time in between, so much has changed. So much has happened. You kind of have to, with a grain of salt, be able to say, hey, it's different now. That's okay that happened then. So that's why it's important for Georgia Tech to do that. If you can look at the development of the staff, the leadership of the staff, and how they're building continuity, I don't think that TCU falls off a cliff necessarily next year. And you may say, well, maybe, Bryce, they do if they don't have a Max Duggan or they don't have somebody else. But what does that cliff look like? Does it look like 8-4? Because that's not necessarily a cliff. A cliff would be to go 3-9. Same thing with Tulane next year. If Willie Fritz is as good of a coach as people think he is this year, Tulane shouldn't fall off the face of the earth next season. That's what Georgia Tech should be striving for, is to have a year like that they're having, but then to be able to turn around and follow it up, not necessarily having to repeat the same effort. It's hard to do that. It's hard to win at a high level in college football consistently. But if Georgia Tech were to have a 9-3 season and then go 9-3 the next year, 10-2, 8-4, and start to establish and raise the bar of the expectations of where the program should be, that is where you want to sit. To where the bar is now consistently an 8-win program. Look, there's a lot of Tech fans that would love to have that. Personally, I would love to see that the bar be at that 8-win. Not saying you couldn't go over. That you can, but the bar is at 8 wins. That would be huge, huge for this program, and we don't even know. Like I said, I don't fully think that we understand the ramifications, the positive ramifications that Georgia Tech could have if they do raise that bar. A lot of national folks have talked about how this is a sleeping giant. It can be a fantastic job. But I think that's why TCU and Tulane are two programs when you take in the academics of both institutions and you take in the markets. Two big markets, New Orleans and the Dallas-Fort Worth area, very comparable to Atlanta in the sense of, you're competing with programs. You're competing with professional teams. You're competing with other programs not too far away that may have had a better success right now than you. I think Georgia Tech has an opportunity here to really grasp, but they've got to be consistent. The coaching staff has to develop the talent in order to do it. Is it there for the taking? It is, and I'm excited to watch what 2023 has to hold. If you're excited to continue watching this show, make sure to hit the like button, make sure to hit subscribe, and comment down below. What do you think? Do you think TCU and Tulane are great programs to model yourself after if you're Georgia Tech? Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe. Head over to thecrowdedbooth.com, join the Discord link, and look, if you want to see the Georgia Tech content the Crowded Booth pulls out, you need to be subscribed to the channel. Completely free. Hit that button right down there below as we begin the climb to 2,000 subscribers. That's all the time we have for today. I want to thank our sponsors, Section 103, some of the best stuff in the game. They've got great gear, and I love everything that they do with their gear. It's fantastic. We are talking Georgia Tech each and every single week. Make sure to stay tuned. Check us out in the podcast form. Check us out on YouTube. That's all the time we have for today. My name is Bryce Koon. So long, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Pile in here and make yourself feel at home. The crowded booth is coming on. The Crowded Booth with Bryce Koon.